Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to the Introduction to English Literature class at the Islamic University of Gaza, English department. So far we have spoken about several romantic poets, romantic figures. And I said before that the romantics were poets and at the same time they were critics. So they were not only writing poetry, but they were also writing criticism, justifying their methods, their school, their movement, in a way that John Donne and his followers did not do. John Donne was writing different poetry, like the Romantics in a way or another, but he was not writing criticism, prose, or verse in order to teach people about their thought and methodology and features and characteristics. We're done with Coleridge and Wordsworth, and they are described as the first generation. The people who were more into the nature and natural and supernatural aspect of life. Then we move to speak about Keats, all those romantic poets. Today we'll speak about Shelley, and we will end with Byron. These are all romantic poets. They share the majority of common features, but each poet is different in his own particular way. We've seen how Keats, for example, was obsessed with time, was obsessed with beauty, was obsessed with finding truth. And the conclusion was that beauty is truth, truth beauty. For him, literature is not poetry, and art, artistic creation and expression is not a means to remember the Augustans, they were like, poetry has to teach and delight. But here it could be more. It could be particularly self-expression, something that you need to do for yourself, for the individual, the human being in you reaching out for others or for even nature. So for him, literature is the end itself, in a way, not just pure art for art's sake. You know, there's a school called art for art's sake. Just write literature just to write literature, okay, or produce art just for art. In part, it's true, but it's a lot more than this. So we'll see how Shelley and Byron also are different in some ways, but similar in other ways. Those two people also share common features, which are, again, clear criticism of the institutions of religion, politics, and society. They always have this aspect, they're calling the people to rebel against the society, to challenge the authorities. Both of them were critical of the politics, the morals, the social conventions of their time. And both of them were openly calling for a rebellion. This is different from Wordsworth, for example, who would just leave all the trouble behind and go to nature, to the countryside, to Lake District, and melt with nature, fills with his heart with pleasure, and then makes it dance with the daffodils in the way we studied before. So Shelley was a very close friend of Keats. And by the way, Keats, Shelley, and Byron, the three of them, they died very young. Keats at 25, Shelley at almost 30, and Byron around 35. And this is the second generation. And I said this before, that this adds some kind of aura, some kind of this perfection around them, that you look at them as perfect people, as people, perfect people in a fictional world. It adds to them, it gives them more symbolic, more meanings and more depth in a way or another. So he was really deeply touched by the death of his best friend, Keats, who died of a disease. But Shelley drowned. He was swimming somewhere in Italy, and he drowned, sadly. And he wrote the famous poem Adonais. About the death, it's elegy. That's what elegy is, when you praise a dead person. And he opens it with this really moving couplet. You know, this is half of the line. He says, I weep for Adonais. He's dead. Oh, weep for Adonais. It's like everyone should be weeping for Keats. Everyone. And look at the choice of words here. The simple, direct. You don't have to go to philosophize. I weep for Adonais. he is dead. And that's it. And I love how this comes. Why would you weep for somebody? He lost a scholarship, he failed a course, his wife left him, he lost his dinner, but all of a sudden it comes that he's dead, suddenly, abruptly, exactly like how he died suddenly. It wasn't a sudden death, but at least in his prime, untimely and prematurely. Shelley's poetry is like Keats' poetry in some way. Basically, both wanted to capture the depth of personal experiences, especially in their search for truth and beauty and meaning for life. But also, Shelley's writing is more like Blake's in the way that it is basically political poetry. He uses nature, or nature is there. We'll see some of his poetry in a bit. But basically, he wants change. He wants more freedom. He wants to change the political and the social system. That's why I like to describe Shelley as the rebel, the revolutionary. And those people remind me of like young poets like Tamim al-Barghouti, for example. You know Tamim. Tamim is a Palestinian poet. He's Palestinian, he's Egyptian, he's like many things, right? At the beginning of the Arab Spring, the very beginning, many people, when there is radical change, they keep calm and silent. They just wait to see where things are going, and then they start speaking up. Yes. Right? These people are opportunists. They just want their own benefits. Now, for Tamim, the first day the Arab Spring started, he wrote one of the most interesting, beautiful poems in the Egyptian dialect called Ya Masrihani Tubanit. Please go to YouTube and listen to this poem. And one of my friends called me and he said, your friend Tamim, he's not my friend, but I like Tamim. You should like Tamim too. Your friend Tamim will be sent behind the sun, or something like we say in Arabic expression, because he dared to speak openly to call people for revolution. بقول يا مصر بهانت وبانت كلها كم يوم نهارنا نادي ونهار الندل مش باين. And he says something like واللي حيقعد في بيته بعدها خاين. Like, if you don't go out, if you don't participate in the revolution, you are betraying your friends, your country. Because if there are 1,000 people out in the streets, the police can't control them. But if there are 1,000,000 people, they can't. So I told him, yeah, ordinary poets do what you say, but great poets like Tamim and like those people, they are always not only part of the change, they are leading the change, as we're going to see in a bit. So in his poem, Queen Mab, he attacks religion, he attacks the morals, he attacks the society, everything. In a way, this is similar in part to the Augustan poetry. Remember when it was all criticizing society and attacking it. Sometime around 1819, there was a massacre in Manchester. You know Manchester? Yeah. Manchester United, Manchester is blue, Manchester is red. Is it red or blue? Are you Manchester City or Manchester United fans?
City, I think.
City? Okay. Ah, you like Guardiola? Yes. Good. Okay, so this year Manchester is blue, if you are football fans, anyway. So in Manchester, some of the workers wanted, they were demanding for more basic human rights, for better salaries, for better work conditions, for security, for safety. And the police killed around 20 of them and injured many others. And Shelley, I guess he was in Italy by that time, and he wrote one of his really most beautiful, powerful poems of all time. It's called The Mask of Anarchy. Anarchy is like chaos, anarchy. Like when you want to destroy what you have and build something new, like fawda, in a way. But he doesn't go. Doesn't chaos has come again. So chaos is necessary. Destruction is necessary, because when you destroy, you build. So he's saying that basically we need to destroy the current system because it's corrupt, it's horrible, and the poor are getting poorer by time, and the rich are getting richer by time. So he calls for what? For social change, for political reforms, and for more freedoms for especially the downtrodden working working class. Let's see this extract from this beautiful. I think this is the last stanza. The Mask of Anarchy. Can someone read? Please. Yeah.
Rise like lions after slumber, and
vanquishable number.
Shake your chains to earth like dew, which in sleep have fallen on you. Ye are many, they are few.
Okay, so you said do. Do is American English. It should rhyme with you, so you go for British English to make the the perfect rhyme. What's a slumber? Do you know slumber party? When you were kids, you would go to sleep at your friends or cousins. This is sleep. Slumber, yeah. Slumber means sleep. It's a poetic word for sleep, slumber. And we pronounce the B, by the way, here because of the stress. So, rise like lions after slumber. In unvanquishable number. Shake your chains to earth like dew. You know dew? When you wake up early in the morning, you find little tiny drops of water on. So this is dew. Okay? Shake your chains to earth like dew, which in sleep had fallen on you. Ye are many, they are few. The police, right? How many policemen do we have here in the country? Like what? 10,000? We have 2 million people. We can easily overcome and overpower. This is openly calling for revolution. He's saying, rise, rebel, fight. You can't beat them. They can't control you as long as you all in unvanquishable numbers go out to the streets and demand your rights. That's a romantic poetry here again. Totally different from Wordsworth, and even Coleridge in a sense. See, is this difficult to understand? He's talking to us, everyone. You don't have to be a university-educated person to love this poetry and to appreciate it. The message is clear. Rise. You are many. They are few. In his other poem, other famous poem also, Ode to the West Wind. It consists of, I think, 4 or 5 sonnets. If you look at the title here, The West Wind, the west wind, it's nature, right? And in the poem, he uses nature to symbolize power and change, basically. So, as a natural element, the wind is able to change and at the same time is able to spread the ideas and the seeds of revolution. When you have, when the wind blows, it moves things, it changes things. And he invites this natural element to be part of the change-making process. So the wind symbolizes power and change. Please.
Did he use the nature to start a revolution indirectly?
Okay, that's a good question. Did he call for a revolution directly or indirectly, implicitly or explicitly? I think he did it like both ways. In the other one, this was openly calling, like, let's fight those, policemen. But here, when you read this, because this is Shelley, you can understand easily. You don't have, if he is arrested for, incitement, and he says, no, the wind only symbolizes nature. I like nature, I love nature. Come on, Shelley. We'll see an extract in a bit here and see how he is also, in a way, wants things to be destroyed and other new things to be built and rebuilt. Okay? What does the wind do? It blows old life, corruption, the political, social, religious system they have, and it can help create a new life with greater freedoms. Sometimes when we read Shelley, he touches our hearts. Like he talks to us directly, especially people who struggle. That's why for colonized, occupied people like us Palestinians, we usually love Shelley more than others. Like my students usually appreciate Shelley more than others. They think that here, nature has been destroyed by Israel, right? Our lands have been occupied. We don't have the basic human rights. We don't have electricity for 24 hours. So we don't have time to appreciate a flower or a bird, right? Or a rose or a tree because of the occupation. So come on, Wordsworth. Go home, you're drunk. But when it comes to Shelley, we're like, yes, this is the kind of poetry because it sparks some sort of struggle in us. It promotes this idea of the necessity of resisting injustice and oppression. But again, he touches us all the time. Like, look at this beautiful, beautiful line. And at the same time, look at the language. Not difficult language. This is in your book. He says, I fall upon the thorns of life. I bleed. He's a master of the short, sharp sentences. I call them the punchy sentences. Just like they come all of a sudden, like, he's dead. He's dead just like that. He's dead. He's gone. He's no longer among us. So, you know the thorns of life? You know, thorns? When you say something is a thorn in somebody's throat, he's causing a lot of trouble and problems for this person. A thorn in a plant, in some kind of flowers, in the rose, there are thorns. When you saw this problem is thorny, it means it's a very difficult problem to solve. A thorn. When you eat fish, they have also these kind of things that can stick in your throat or tongue. So you should be careful. So, I fall upon the thorns of life. I bleed. Is he saying, I'm ready, I'm willing to sacrifice myself to die, to bleed for the people, for change?
Yeah.
Maybe he is. I'm calling for a revolution, for a rebellion, for change. Even if I die, even if I bleed, I don't care. As long as we bring about change, and that is the different kind of romantic poetry. Remember, we said many people accused Wordsworth of being an escapist. Where are you going? He's saying, it's corrupt here in the city. I'm going to the countryside. It's not my business. I can't change. And many people said the very idea of changing language is significant because by time you change people's mentalities, you change people's behavior, you change people's ways of life, styles. And it's happening now. A generation later, people are using poetry to call for political, religious, and social change. In the Ode to the West Wind, the last part of the last sonnet, I'll read this unless someone likes to read. Okay?
Drag my dead thoughts over the universe like withered leaves to quicken a new birth, and by the
incantation of this verse. You know this verse? What's this verse? Verse. This verse. This sonnet, this poetry. He knows, he's clearly conscious that his poetry can be the change he wants to see in the world. So, drive the dead thoughts over the universe like withered leaves to quicken. So, get away for the dead thoughts, the corruption and everything. That we can get easily rid of this. Just, we need some wind. We need some people to do action. Like, what's his name? Brother Malcolm X always says, if you want something, you would better make some noise. So let's make some noise. Let's make something about this. So to quicken a new birth, and that's the paradox between the opposites. The binary is between dead and birth. How can you bring new birth, new things? By sweeping away the dead things. With what is going to do this? His verse. His verse is like the west wind. It can change. Go on.
Scatter as from an
unextinguished hearth, ashes
and sparks, my words among mankind.
So the words here, the poetry, the verse, can be scattered like seeds. You know the seeds, budur, shajar, budur? It can be scattered by the wind. So my words here are like the seeds of change, the seeds of revolution. Oh, scatter them around the people. And indeed, here in Gaza, I don't know how many hundreds of miles away from where he wrote this poetry, this is his seeds, this is his words scattered to us here. We are inspired in a way or another. Many people around the world have been inspired by this. Yes?
Bethrow my lips to unawakened air, the sound of prophecy, oh wind. If winter comes, can spring be far behind?
Oh, what a beautiful line here again. If winter comes, if winter here symbolizes what? Cold, inaction, death, darkness, right? Corruption, could be, right? Can spring be far behind? And this is called a rhetorical question. A question that answers itself. In a way, he's saying, spring cannot be far behind. Like, no matter how long the night is, dawn is going, the new day is going to break soon after. If winter comes, can spring be far behind? No, as long as we scatter the seeds of change, as long as we start the change ourselves, like Mahatma Gandhi says, be the change you want to see in the world. Start that change. And this is Shelley. Beautiful poet, beautiful poetry. Inspiring, rebellious, and revolutionary. Now, Shelley was also a critic. He was a literary critic. He wrote a famous article named The Defense of Poetry. الدفاع عن الشعر. He would defend poetry as if it were a person, a friend. The book describes him as an optimist and as a pessimist. Optimist, somebody who hopes, who sees good things coming. Someone who looks at the half full of the cup. And a pessimist who sees, no hope, no way out of this. He was a pessimist because he understood the situation was bleak, was dark, was tough, corrupt. But he was optimist that change sooner or later will come. There is a novel by the Palestinian novelist Emil Habibi called Al-Mutasha'il, which is part optimist, part pessimist, and it could be the pisso-optimist. So pisso-optimist, you mutasha'il. Okay? In his essay, I'm quoting two things here. Really interesting, beautiful quotes from his essay in defense of poetry. But poetry can reform the world. This is his ideology. Poetry can, remember Keats was saying, poetry is beauty, poetry is truth. Poetry immortalizes, gives life, gives eternity to us. Here, poetry can change. And I know many people, especially those who study science, maybe you dislike poetry because you're studying it, you have to do it for the exam, but please try to get rid of this negativity and try to see how beautiful poetry, how it inspires us and changes us in a way or another. He believes strongly that poetry can be the change, can change and reform the world. Two extracts here, two sentences from the article, really interesting to know. The rich, he's describing the political and the social divide, the class division in London, in the UK, in Europe probably in general. But this is not class division where you have a middle class. This is a situation where you don't have a middle class. Like probably the situation now in Gaza, we don't have a middle class. It's disappearing, and that's very dangerous because people are either very rich, extremely rich, or extremely poor. Like here, many people are not getting their salaries. You could be a middle class person, you get, $1,000, but all of a sudden you don't get your salary and you are poor because you don't have other sources of income. So the situation here, he describes it as the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And this is the worst of all situations. Any society that gets to this point is self-destructive. Where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. No matter how much poverty we have, there will always be people who benefit from this. So let's change it. Let's do something to it. And finally, he says, again, about poets being the leaders of change, the people who begin the change, the people who reform. Poets are the acknowledged legislators of the world. Is it world? Yes. We have the Palestinian Legislative Council, the people we elect long time ago to represent us in the parliament. So people in the parliament here in Gaza, in Palestine, it's called Palestinian Legislative Council. Legislator, a lawmaker, somebody who makes laws. So according to Shelley, poets are the first people who make laws, who talk about necessary things in the society, who talk about important issues in the society. But they are unacknowledged. Could be unacknowledged means that many people don't think that poets are important and serious, or maybe he means this is here it means unofficial. What does it mean here? It means that, yeah.
It means that they are legislatures, but they are not assigned from the government.
They don't have an official position or job, but they always begin the change. And it's true. Remember that the Rime of the Ancient Mariner? I think it's about, in a way or another, about climate change. It's about global warming in a way. And this is a poet who wrote about this 200 or 150 years before people started complaining about killing animals, particular animals and particular species. So poets all the time begin to speak about things that ordinary people don't pay attention to, even politicians, even lawmakers, even legislators. So the poets are the unofficial legislators, lawmakers, leaders of change, leaders of reform in the world. Unofficial because they don't have a job, they get salary, they get money for that. So this is his, very brief, the essence of his defense of poetry. Poetry can reform and change. Now Lord Byron, any question about Shelley? Again, I invite you to go to YouTube, just look for Shelley's poetry, see what more poetry you can like about this guy. Maybe you want to start from the Ode to the West Wind. He has another sonnet. It's called Ozymandias. Ozymandias, one of the most beautiful sonnets ever. But we're not going to study it because we're only just taking, the basics here. Byron. The other day I was talking to my colleague, and I told her, you know what? I really like Byron. I started to appreciate him. And she said, like, what? If Byron has said nothing except this stanza, it's enough. He's amazing. And I started reading more and more about Byron, and he's really an interesting person, an interesting poet at the same time. So I'll start with the extract she sent me. This one. She says, if he hasn't written anything but this stanza, it's enough. Why? Let's see. There is a pleasure in the pathless woods. You know, when you go to the woods, we don't have woods here, but usually when people go through particular areas of nature, you create a path because you keep walking and people keep walking in the same area. It happens in gardens, in public gardens. But the pure, innocent, wild areas of nature where nobody goes there, where it is untouched by human beings, we don't have paths. So pathless wood, like you go to a place where no one or very few people have been there. There is a rapture, excitement, and joy on the lonely shore when you are alone, with nature. There is society where none intrudes, because you are the society. You create the society, you as an individual. There is a society where no one is there, no one intrudes, no one interrupts. By the deep sea and music in its roar, the music of the sea, despite the fact that he uses the word roar, and roar is not, musical in a way, but still he sees the beauty in nature, in the sound of the waves and probably the birds. I love not man less, but nature more. This is a romantic feature. It doesn't mean I hate communities, I hate society, I hate being with others, but I love nature more. We've seen this in Wordsworth, where he kicked out his sister Dorothy from the daffodils. They were together. They saw the scene together, and she wrote about it in her diaries. I was walking with my brother Willie, and we saw this. But in the text, where is she? He kicks her out. Is he anti-feminist? Maybe, but they were best friends also. But it's the individuality, the solitude he is seeking here. I love not man less, but nature more. So, Lord Byron, again, like Shelley, he was a revolutionary. He was a rebellious person. He wanted to change. He wanted political. He wanted social. He wanted religious. He wanted moral change and moral reform throughout all England. In the characters in his poems are usually rebellious. They rebel against the societies, and at the same time they challenge the conventions. They usually go against the conventions to break the rules and the chains. We'll see a lot of passion and feelings with heroes who rebel against the society. Rebel, from rebellion to challenge something. And his poem, Don, if in Spanish, this Don Juan. Some English people pronounce it Juan, and some dialects Juan. Do you know Spanish, anyone? Don Juan? I think it's something like this. Anyway, this is a famous poem, Don Juan, because it's Spanish. Juan. Like, Juan Mata, the Manchester United player. Some people say Juan Mata. Something like this. Anyway, in this poem, it go to, by the way, I was listening to this the other day on YouTube. There are always all sorts of horrible and racist comments in the comment section in sections on YouTube. But I love the discussion. There was a discussion whether it should be Don Juan or Don Juan or Don Juan, and people were saying stuff. Interesting. So Byron uses satire, comedy, and irony. Remember, we left satire behind with the Augustans. When we said bye-bye Alexander Pope, bye-bye Dryden, take your satire and go away, we have a new era, a new sensibility. And it's a vicious circle. People here go back to keep recycling things and recycling things. But his comedy is so beautiful, so funny, and so interesting. So what does he do? He involves the readers. He makes them part of his poetry in a way where they question their own values and the values of the societies and the surroundings. In this poem, this is an extract from the poem here. It's in your book. Let's see what he does here from Don Juan. Yes, please.
He poured upon the leaves and on the flowers, and heard the voice in all the winds, and then he thought of wood snakes and immortal powers, and how the
goddesses, yeah,
came down to men. He missed the best way, he forgot the hours, and when he looked upon his watch again, he found how much all time had been a winner. He also found that he had lost his dinner.
So he went to bed hungry?
Yeah.
Empty stomach? Look how the poem begins. It's so typical Wordsworth. He poured upon, like when you spend a lot of time examining something, studying something, because you have passion, you are obsessed about it. We do this all the time. You would hold your pen and you keep just scribbling or gazing at things. I gazed and gazed, but little thought. You're fascinated by a particular thing, by a piece of pizza or cheesecake. You just, wow, right? Fascinated by what you see. But he's not saying I. He's distancing himself from this practice. So he poured upon the leaves, nature, right? And the flowers. I think he's having a dig at Wordsworth here. I think he's saying Wordsworth spends too much time gazing and wondering and studying the leaves and the flowers. And heard a voice. Remember, we didn't study Lucy Gray here. The poet Wordsworth says, I heard a voice. Many of his poems, he says, I heard a voice, the solitary reaper, etc. So he usually hears natural voices and voices in nature. And heard a voice in all the winds. And then he thought of wood nymphs. The nymph, it's the magical creature. Yeah, it's a magical creature only in fairy tales, a supernatural creature.
Female.
Yeah, female supernatural creature. I think also there could be something about Coleridge, because Coleridge was interested in the nature. So in my understanding, this is metafictional. Okay, this is not working. Metafictional. You know metafiction again?
Fiction talks about
Fiction about fiction. What does it mean? What does it mean, fiction about fiction?
a story or a poem talks about another story.
Okay, so why? Why would you talk about another text in your text? To illustrate, to criticize, to mock, to challenge, to underestimate, to explain, to make use of many things. So the fact that in my reading he is alluding to Wordsworth and Coleridge, in a way making fun of what they do, spending too much time with nature, with leaves, with flowers, hearing imaginary voices, talking about imaginary creatures, probably there is something about those people. And how the goddesses came down to men. That's the first stanza. He's basically talking about how nature influences, the spiritual aspect. Can you turn that off? No, turn it off. Turn it off. No. Okay, so the first stanza speaks about the spirituality of nature, how you would lose your everything, yourself, just gazing and enjoying nature. Let's see what happens in the second stanza. Someone read the second stanza. Okay, please.
He
Seal.
missed the pathway, he forgot the hour.
So while you're doing this, while you're fascinated by nature and the supernatural, what happens in real life? Does anything wait for you? Does life wait for you until you finish? Nothing waits. So what happens, number one?
He missed the pathway and forgot the hours.
He missed the pathway, he forgot the hours also.
And when he looked upon his watch again, he found how much old time had been
Oh
away.
yeah, time does not wait. Listen, if you want change, you create the change. You be the change. You don't just go to nature, to the trees and flowers, spend your time like gazing at them and thinking that the problems, the corruption, it will solve itself. It will just go away. No. And
He also found that he had lost his dinner.
he also found,
That's comedy.
that's very comic, very funny, he lost his dinner. Like while you were busy, it's like when you are at home, you have so many brothers and sisters, and you are the romantic person, you are the one who gazes, so you look to gaze at the super moon, and you're like, wow. The child like, oh, right, you just, wow. And like, where's the food? Where's the pizza? Where's my piece of pizza? Oh, we just ate it. You were too busy, too obsessed with nature that you lose touch of real life. And this is, in my opinion, he's having a dig at the first generation romantic poets who would Wordsworth and daffodils, and there's another poem, short poem. He says, "My heart leaps up when I see a rainbow. When I see a rainbow, it's just like a kid." Where he says the child is the father of man. Just a rainbow inspires him. Not saying that's bad or horrible, but see, some of the romantics were not okay with what you're doing, and he goes back to satire. So while you're doing these things, life can't wait. Time keeps going on, and most importantly, for many of us, probably you will lose your dinner. Where's the food? You just ate it. You were just busy enjoying the scene, and we ate it. You were just busy feeding your spirituality, and we just fed the stomach, filled the bellies with food. And this is an interesting thing, how he uses again satire and comedy to criticize something. This is what I'm seeing in this extract. Okay? So finally, this is Byron brief. He was a revolutionary. He called for political, social change, and he wanted to challenge the society and the conventions. And like I'm saying here, he's also challenging in a way or criticizing the first generation of romantic poets, especially Wordsworth.
Maybe he wanted to edit something in romantic.
He wanted to add, like Shelley and Keats, the second generation were more involved in real life. In a way, I think he's saying that poetry that doesn't change, poetry that doesn't cause change, poetry that doesn't improve our lives, literature that doesn't make us better people and doesn't improve our lives in a way or another, is not good poetry. It's not good literature. Some people would disagree because they would say, no, I'm doing it just for the sake of doing it. Like I'm art for art's sake. Okay, we'll stop here, and next class we'll move to speak about two romantic figures, two female romantic writers. The first one is Mary Shelley. You know, Mary Shelley. She's Percy Shelley's wife. يعني العائلة الكريمة كلها جاية. You know, I'm not sure if they have kids. We would be studying them also. So Mary Shelley is a novelist. We'll study something about Frankenstein, and then Mary Shelley, Frankenstein, and then we will study Jane Austen. And some of you might, if you're familiar with Jane Austen, might say, what? But Jane Austen is a Victorian figure. We'll say something about this. She's pre-Victorian, late Romantic. She's the link between both generations. If you have any question, any comment, anything to add, please do.
Verses.
Say again?
Some verses were not in the book, should be memorized.
Okay, that's a good question. You should just know them. We focus on the extracts in the book, basically. Unless I tell you, you need to study this. Any question? Okay, good luck, ladies, and please have an enjoyable weekend, and don't forget your dinner while you're doing that.